Well, good evening, good evening, good evening to the full house of three people here. Let me take this out of the way. Awesome. So in this video, we're going to be discussing Saturn in the ninth house. Welcome, everybody. I see the chat is empty, but there are a few people here. But in any case, let us begin. So Saturn in the ninth house. One of the ways that Saturn would minimize this house, as Saturn always minimizes and always limits every house that it sits in, is by quite literally making the individual so stubborn that they are uninterested in entertaining other arguments. This would make someone so dogmatic in their views because the ninth house would be closed off to influences. Such a one, if they are born into a particular tradition, would literally close their ears off to not entertain any other arguments that contradict their position, but this is Saturn when it's badly placed in the ninth. So that is one expression of Saturn in the ninth house. Hello, Janae. So that is one expression of Saturn in the ninth house. Moving on, I think this is the same expression. Saturn could also make a person totally ignorant of the true meaning behind the practices and beliefs of its community. Because remember, Saturn is also the planet of ignorance. It can make somebody ignorant as to the true meaning behind the practices and beliefs of its community, religion, or society, but still blindly follow them without questioning them. It is the planet of subservience, and so an individual may actually feel totally out of place, even daring to question the rules and beliefs and practices of their culture or community. Or religion, because they fear retaliation and punishment, as Saturn's placements tend to punish individuals who fall out of step. I didn't finish this thought, but I'll just keep it like that. As Saturn's placements tend to punish individuals who fall out of step, because it is the greater malefic. But Saturn, when it is better placed, would make an individual a natural scientist, in the sense that such a one would only ever adhere to a belief system that has been tested and for which there is evidence. Such a one would never believe in anything unless it can see and experiment with it for itself. The ninth house is the house where we develop theories, philosophies, and so Saturn would make someone interested in empirical research and then would only ever promote ideas that are backed by science. For this reason, this position also makes atheists, because an atheist is one who does not receive beliefs and theories and philosophies passively, but seeks instead to study and personally experience and experiment with each received concept. But this position also makes those who are heavily interested in occultism, because many occultists fall into this field wishing to make a science out of spirituality. All right then, so Saturn is not a planet of abstraction. The ninth house is a very abstract house, but Saturn is not a planet of abstraction. Saturn can only understand things that it experiences personally. And so it is not a planet of received knowledge. Jupiter is a planet of received knowledge, but Saturn is not. Saturn can only understand things that it experiences personally. And so for that reason, when Saturn is better placed in the ninth house, it makes somebody who never receives ideas passively, but anytime it receives an idea and it's given an idea, it's like, okay, I need to test this out for myself. I need to see this for myself. I need to experience this for myself. I need to test this out for myself. And so even though the ninth house is not generally a house that we associate with scientists and things like that, when Saturn gets in there, it becomes a house that's interested in science. Because the ninth house is the house where cultural ideas, religious ideas, social ideas are imposed upon us, right? And many of these ideas, we don't really understand their origin, their meaning, their value, but we just go along with them anyway. But Saturn here does not just go along with it. The ninth house is also stereotypically associated with religion, where people just go along with the rituals and the things of their religion. But Saturn here would make a person, when it's better placed, of course, would make a person so resistant to passively going along with the things of their religion and they'd want to personally experience spiritual things, that they'd either become atheistic, completely rejecting religious ideas and things like that, or they would become occultists, because occultists are some of the most practical spiritual people out. In fact, occultists are generally the most practically spiritual people, because it's as if they're trying to make a science out of spirituality. All right, then. Looks like it's just you and me, Jana. A show for a one-person audience. That's fine. Where are we now? Okay. Saturn is a planet of shadows and secrets, and the natural karaka of the 8th house. Saturn here could actually make a person so interested in personally experiencing and experimenting with spiritual subjects that it can turn someone into a witch or warlock or astral projector or yoga instructor or exorcist or ceremonial magician. Because very often it is occultists that are actively, practically engaging with spiritual subjects and are really trying to experience them tangibly in order to then formulate a theory or philosophy or belief system. And then, after years of experimentation, the Saturn in the 9th individual would be ready to produce and promote a new theory to share with the world. If you have Saturn in the 9th house, you are likely perceived as very different, original, unusual, because you take concepts and ideas generally held to be true and you either reject them outright, ignore them, or again take them into a laboratory setting. Remember that Saturn can so deny the significations of a placement that it literally brings about its opposite. So whereas the 9th house is ordinarily related to churches and mosques and temples, and other such gatherings where people are told what to think and taught how to behave without proper explanation, Saturn would make this house so mundane that now it could quite literally put you in a lab, because an occultist almost operates in a lab or mystical lab of sorts, as much of occultism is, again, trying to reduce spirituality into a science. Naturally, scientists themselves, whether it is those who study physics or those who study social sciences, even they are interested in taking commonly held beliefs and studying them in the most mundane way possible. Such a Saturn would not just accept the notion that the Earth is 2,000 years old, he will look to physics to see. Such a Saturn would not merely accept collective ideas of stereotypes about men and women and other cultures, but will look to the social sciences to see for a fact. So, Saturn in the 9th would be resistant to all sorts of ideas and would to some extent question those ideas. Again, all culturally held ideas, all culturally imposed ideas, because the 9th house is also a house of culture. And it's a house where cultural ideals are imposed on individuals. So, for example, Saturn the 9th would question gender norms, right? Because it would ask many questions about gender norms and things of that nature. Let me go back to the chat to see. Oh, wow, you're an atheist. Okay. Oh, you're going through a Saturn return. Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, I see there are more people in the chat. If you guys have got questions, feel free. You're an atheist now because you weren't an atheist in the beginning. I see. Okay. Where are we now? Such a Saturn is likely to ask many questions and ask for direct, simple, and straightforward explanations to commonly held religious or social ideas. Such as Saturn may question, again, gender norms, asking, why must men open the door for women, and why don't men wear skirts? Saturn in the 9th also aspects the 3rd house of mental processing and the literal act of thinking. The 3rd house is also the question-asking house. The 3rd house is also the question-asking house, because to ask question is a necessary aspect of thinking. This is also a position of a rebellious individual. Again, because one is resistant to listening and obeying the wisdom and teachings of those who have come before it. One would be especially rebellious towards one's father's teaching and advice. One wouldn't care about how things have been done in the past or the accumulated lessons of one's culture. One would wish to instead live and experiment with one's own ideas of the world. One could be accused of being very arrogant, for daring to go against what elders say, for daring to exalt one's own individual intelligence above the tried and tested methods of the past. Let me add a little bit more here. The ninth house is not only the house of the father, but the fathers, the patriarchs of society. The patriarchs of society. I can't remember if I wrote this in the document later down. I think I probably did, but let me just write this here anyway. The ninth house is also the house of the father, but the fathers, the patriarchs of society, the ones who come up with the rules, the rituals, the beliefs, the conventions, and then proceed to impose these ideas on the collective and on the native. Impose. So yeah, the ninth house is where there are different houses that relate to culture and astrology. The second house, the fourth house, the 11th. Oh, let me write the here. The 11th and the 9th. And notice something about all of these houses. They are some way related to Jupiter, which is specifically the planet of culture and the planet of the collective. Jupiter is the Karaka of the second, it is the Karaka of the 11th, and it is the Karaka of the 9th. And though Jupiter is not the Karaka of the fourth, it exalts in Cancer. And so all these houses have to do with culture. But the second house is more so cultural history. The fourth house is more so like the mother and how she introduces you to the culture. The 11th house has more to do with your social circle, and generally speaking, your social circle is going to be related to your culture as well, because you're going to conform to the conventions of the various groups and the various collectives that you belong to. And finally, the ninth house also has to do with culture, but the more imposing aspects of culture, the imposing aspects of society, the aspects of society that tell you what to do, the aspects of society that behave like that paternal force telling you how to operate within it, right? So yeah. That is it. Let me go to the chat before I continue. Okay, that's very, very interesting. It's interesting also that you use the example of being a Muslim, because I'm gonna be making references to that kind of stuff later on. Hi. Could this placement make somebody a feminist? Yes, it can make somebody a feminist as well. Because once again, when you have Saturn in the ninth house, generally speaking, you do not passively submit to the commonly held ideas of your collective. So if your collective has ideas about what a woman should be and how a woman should operate, Saturn here would stop and say, wait a second. I need to actually understand this personally and really experiment with these ideas to really know whether these ideas are true. And so, yeah, Saturn in the ninth house can create an atheist. Saturn in the ninth house can create an occultist, because an occultist is somebody who tries to go about spirituality in the most practical way possible. And it can also create a feminist, because you're questioning gender norms all the time and you're not just receiving these ideas. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Somebody who has Moon in the ninth house, for example, they'd be much more willing to just submit and go along with the various ideas of their collective. How does Saturn aspects differ? The third, the seventh, and the 10th. I'm going to talk about Saturn's aspects on the 11th house, the 6th house, because its third aspect lands on the 11th and its 10th aspect lands on the 6th. So I'm going to talk about that. Oh, Saturn and Jupiter conjoined, the Great Malefic and the Great Benefic. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. You're an occultist. You are an occultist, yeah. Many of us are here. Actually, let me even add something that I did not add in this document. So Saturn is a planet that denies things, right? It can enter into a house and it can so deny those significations that it can quite literally bring out the opposite. So whereas the 8th house is generally speaking a house of occultism for Moon, for Jupiter, for Venus, if Saturn enters into the 9th house, the 8th house, now you're no longer interested in occultism. Now you're afraid of occultism because Saturn is a planet of fear. The 8th house is also a house that is related to shame and to secrets, because when your secrets are exposed, you're ashamed and you're humiliated. The 8th house is also related to rebellion, because since it's related to shadows and the things that we do in the dark, in what context do most people rebel against society? When society can't see it. Most people, when they choose to rebel, they do it behind the scenes. You know, if you have Venus or Jupiter in the 8th house, you're probably rebellious, but you pretend like you're a civilized person. If you have Sun and Moon in the 8th house, you're much more openly rebellious, because those are the planets of your personality and they bring light to the 8th house, since Sun and Moon are the two major planets of light. But if you have Saturn in the 8th house, you become a normal person. If you have Saturn in the 8th house, you are not rebellious. You do not wish to rebel against society. And what you see is what you get. You're not a person of secrets. But now get this. Whereas Saturn in the 8th house does not produce an interest in occultism, Saturn in the 9th house does produce interest in occultism. You see, and so that's very interesting. The 8th house is the house of rebels generally, and the 9th house is the house of people who are conventional and who conform to society. But Saturn, when it enters into these houses, it flips those significations. Yes, Saturn in the 9th also creates father problems. I'm going to talk about that. Oh, that's interesting. Where are we now? Some way. This position can actually cause someone to be totally rejected by one's culture. Totally rejected by one's culture. And totally isolated with no support. From the 9th, Saturn aspects the 11th house of one's social network, which includes one's community and culture, and also aspects the 6th house of one's best friends, the people who directly support one and assist one. The 6th house is a house of best friends, because your best friends are the people who share your burden. You know, they're the ones who share your trials, share your tribulations, and they're the ones who really go out of the way to fight for you against your enemies. By aspecting these houses, Saturn makes these houses smaller, such that an individual becomes lonely, isolated, abandoned, rejected, and forced to either become a recluse or forced to totally leave one's culture and community behind in search of a new community. Why is this? Why does Saturn in the 9th house make a person lonely and rejected by their society and their culture? Controlling the 6th and the 11th house, by rejecting the beliefs and the values of your culture could literally retaliate against you. Retaliate against you. And so let me even underline this. By rejecting the values, the beliefs and the values of your culture could literally retaliate against you. Let me do this. To such an extent that they can even take away your job, 6th house, or any means of you supporting yourself, 6th house, and even effectively starve you. This is actually quite reminiscent of the phenomenon of being canceled. A modern day practice of essentially attempting to destroy the life of an individual who dares to go against the customs and beliefs of the collectives. So we are seeing that the culture and its practices place such a heavy weight on the individual that the individual feels pressured to at least pretend to follow these rules so that their livelihood is not taken away from them. Okay, so Remember that earlier in the document, let me not lose my place here. We're on the third page. Remember that earlier in the document, I said that one expression of Saturn in the ninth house is people that blindly submit to their culture, blindly submit to their religion, blindly submit to the various ideas of their collective without questioning too much. Well, that's one expression of Saturn. You want to know why? Because you are so aware of how oppressive your culture and your collective is, and since Saturn is a planet that punishes you and impresses you, you are aware that if you dare to question your collective could retaliate against you, reject you, isolate you, starve you, leave you out in the wild to die, right? And so that's one reason why people who have Saturn in the ninth house, one expression of that is people who they just go along to get along. They don't understand the reasons why people are doing what they're doing. They don't understand gender norms. They're frustrated with these things, but they just go along with them anyway. Another expression of Saturn in the ninth house are people who are fully rebellious. People who are completely rejecting everything that their culture has to say. They don't agree with it. They think it's wrong. They personally experiment those things personally, and then they come to their own conclusions, and then they rebel against their culture. But then what happens? Their culture ostracizes them. And so you can see these two different branches, both equally valid of Saturn in the ninth. And you can tell what inclination an individual has depending on the rest of the chart. Let's say somebody has Saturn in the ninth and they also have Vishaka placements. Vishaka is the ultimate rebellious nakshatra. So somebody has Saturn in the ninth and Vishaka placements, that person is probably going to be very lonely and very much rejected by their society. But now let's say somebody has Saturn in the ninth and they have Shravana placements. Shravana has more of a tendency to pretend to submit to their culture. You know what I mean? And so somebody with Shravana placements and Saturn in the ninth, they'll just go along to get along. Do they understand some of these cultural practices? Not really, but they know the power that the collective exercises, and they're like, you know what? Let me not even fight these people. Let me just go along, or else these people will starve me, or something like that. Right? Because again, Saturn in the ninth aspects the 11th and the 6th, and the 6th is our livelihood and our ability to care for ourselves. All right then. This is you pretending not to be an occultist in your very Christian community. Oh, LOL. Very funny. Is Mars a significator of friends or Mercury? Mars and Mercury are both related to friends, but Mercury is more so related to quick friendships, and Mars is related to best friendships. Mercury is the communication planet. You know, it can quickly make friends with anybody. But Mars relates to people that truly defend you. People who truly take your burden on their shoulders, people who are your ride or die, people who will bleed for you, people who will die for you. So they're both related to friendships, but Mars is related to best friendships and to brotherhood, actually, because Mars is specifically the planet of siblings. So Mars is related to best friendships to the point where you guys are so close that you become brothers and sisters. And Mercury is all sorts of friendships and casual friendships. So yeah. Very sorry to hear that, Amira. Very, very sorry to hear that. And actually, I even speak about this, and I even speak specifically about the father. Let's continue. I knew I had written this later down in the document. The ninth house is the house of the fathers, the patriarchs. Those who have built one's culture, and it again represents the accumulated teachings of the past that is then passed down and imposed upon a newer generation. Let me even make this bold. Imposed upon a newer generation. Saturn is a planet of oppression that forces people into slavery. It wishes to destroy people's identities such that they become nameless and faceless, and only ever identify with the task it places before them. Where we have Saturn can suggest those who oppress us. Oppress, not oppresses. And here, one's fodder or one's tradition could be deeply oppressive, removing an individual's freedoms. So Saturn in the night could make the individual himself a rebel, trying to avoid the significations of the ninth house, but it also makes the fodder and the fodders more imposing and controlling and demanding. One's fodder would be strict with his rules and demands, using the customs and traditions of the culture as shackles to an individual's freedom. He could tell his daughter that they can't leave the house without a male escort. He could prohibit his children from watching television. He could force arranged marriages even if the children do not want one. Again, Saturn in the night also aspects the 11th house, suggesting that one's father would have the power also to control one's network circle and collective, which he would then manipulate for the purpose of further controlling you, the individual. Again, Saturn in the night also aspects the 6th house, suggesting that your father may be so controlling that he even controls your ability to care for yourself. Perhaps your father has infantilized you, keeping you from fully developing into your own autonomous adult. That way, you are more fully under his control. It is for this reason that the individual may feel an overwhelming pressure to submit to the father. So we're seeing other reasons why somebody who has Saturn in the night may blindly decide to just submit to whatever it is that their culture or their father is telling them to do, because their culture and their father literally control their life. I mean, the second somebody controls your 6th house and your 11th house, which is all of your friends and every single person that you know, they control you. And so somebody who has Saturn in the night, your father is probably so controlling, and he's probably the type of person that tells you, like, you have to do what he says. Because if you don't do what he says, he cuts your allowance. You're an adult, but he still supports you with your allowance. If you don't do what he says, he owns you practically. And so you must submit to his culture. You must submit to his advice. You must submit to his teachings. You must submit to his sayings. Because yes, even your father has the ability to starve you, even as you enter into adulthood. But remember, once you cross your Saturn return, your first Saturn return, this shackle is generally speaking released. So not all is lost. That first Saturn return is important, but you have to be doing the work even before the Saturn return. You have to be doing the work even before the Saturn return in order for it to really be effective. Or else when the Saturn return does come and it releases you, you still suffer. So Saturn return is not a freedom from all things. Let me go to the chat for a little bit. If you're looking for best friendships, listen, obviously the specific situation you'd have to see. But yeah, a lot of times when a planet is in the 12th house, what it generally suggests is that those significations are being lost. Let me tell you something that I've actually found. Astrology can be so straightforward. Anytime I see somebody having planets in the 12th house, quite literally they're losing the significations of that planet. Many people that I know that grew up without a father, they have the 9th lord in the 12th house. They literally grew up without a father. 4th lord in the 12th house, they literally grew up without a mother, or their mother used to travel a lot. So yeah, if you have Mars in the 12th, yeah, there's probably that. Or it's probably something else in your chart. We don't know. We don't know. Wonderful. God bless you, Amira. God bless you. Okay, why don't I take this opportunity to shamelessly plug my links. Let me just open this incognito window over here. My Patreon. Hidden Octave Patreon. So if you guys are interested in more astrological insights, information, please check out my Patreon. I know you guys know that I have books on my Patreon. The Beauty in Jyotish book, which I'm coming up with a second edition. my recent posts as well. I have 100 and how many posts? 185 posts over several different years. Yeah, a lot of astrological information. And also, right now, but only for a very short period of time, my readings are open. So yeah, but only for a very short period. Where are we? Where are we? You have Capricorn over the ninth house, or do you mean that you have this sign Capricorn in the ninth house where you don't have planets there? It's not going to apply to you as much, not nearly as much. Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. And you guys moved along a lot. Okay, let us go back to the documents. I feel like this is going to be a very, very short stream. Okay, so here we go. Your father probably gives you an allowance, drives you around, pays your taxes, and in general, infantilizes you even as an adult. If I'm not mistaken, Saturn in the fourth does the same thing. As in the fourth, it also aspects the sixth house, suggesting again that the mother controls your day-to-day life and your ability to sustain yourself. And if you do not submit to her, your actual livelihood is threatened. So having either Saturn in the fourth or Saturn in the ninth, your parents are probably very, very controlling. They probably exercise a lot of control over you. Whether it's lovingly or not, that's a different story. Yeah. Moving on. The ninth house is also the house of character and good conduct. Because one who is well instructed from a young age as to what to do and what not to do, how to behave in public, how to address important people, what is the right fork to use at an elaborate dinner party, how to tip one's waiter, how to treat a wife, how to fill out a tax form, etc. A strong ninth house is suggestive of someone who is socially respected and socially powerful because from a young age they were well instructed and therefore are well received in society when they are older. But Saturn here, if it is badly placed, suggests an individual who was never instructed by anyone. If it is badly placed, he may have grown up without a father and without anyone who could properly guide him. For this reason, he may be ignorant as to how to exist like a civilized person within society. When Saturn is badly placed, one either had no instruction as a child and was forced to figure out so much of life on their own, or one was likely influenced by very bad characters, and so one may have ended up a criminal of sorts, a drug dealer, a gangster, because one was seduced by ideas and individuals that did not help one develop. The role of the mother is to nurture the body, but the role of the father is to give direction to the soul. The mother provides the milk for your body to grow and the love needed to keep it warm, but the father designs the child's future, preparing him, coaching him, guiding him to live up to that potential. And so, having Saturn badly placed in the ninth can suggest that one may not have a well-designed future. One is merely wandering through life. So, an athlete's father was coached by his father from a young age to wake up early and to run the field 10 times before practicing. A musician's father was taught by him his first strings and instructed to practice his instruments for at least an hour a day every day. All of this early childhood instruction is for the purpose of preparing him for his future. But again, a Saturn in the ninth individual may not have had an early life instruction to prepare him for his future, and for this reason, if Saturn is especially badly placed, his life may be wandering aimlessly and going nowhere. So this is yet another reason why such a placement can make someone, at its worst, a social reject, a misfit, a rebel, because they do not fit in properly into conventional civilized society or the conventions of their collective, because they lacked that necessary early life instruction of whose responsibility is specifically the father. But always remember that Saturn is a planet that starts out ignorant, but then develops into knowledge with hard work. And so, even if one's father was absent, he did not design one's future. One may have oneself done their best to learn things on their own, but through humility and patience, you could have overcome your shortcomings. So, what else does Saturn in the ninth do? Why don't we talk about social class? Why don't we talk about social class? The houses of culture are also the houses of one's social class. So, this is extra stuff. The second house is a house of class. It quite literally has to do with the wealth of your family. The fourth house is a house of class. It quite literally has to do with your mother's ability to provide for you. The ninth house is a house of class. It has to do with your father's ability to provide for you. And the 11th house is house of class, because your class is also related to everybody that you know, your network circle, the people you went to school with, the people who you network with, right? These four houses are specifically houses that are related to social class. But now let us speak specifically about the ninth house. What am I trying to say here? Something very interesting that many sociologists observe. It is the different ways that lower class people and upper class people raise their children. So, for example, here's one difference. Lower class people usually have the attitude of thinking that education only happens at school. You send your child to school, he learns there. When he comes back home, you guys don't discuss academics, you guys don't explore philosophical subjects, etc. But upper class people have the attitude towards education that is, education is everywhere all the time, every minute of the day. It is not just something that you do at school. You send your child to school, your child comes back, you do your homework with your child. You investigate your child's mind. You watch a movie with your child and you start asking him questions like, oh, what are the names of these characters? What do you think is the reasoning behind that character doing that thing? Upper class individuals also, during the dinner table, they encourage their children to ask many, many questions. Children tend to ask a lot of questions. They encourage those questions and they come up with answers along with their children. Whereas lower class people oftentimes have the attitude of, when your child is constantly asking questions, you become frustrated with him. You tell him, listen, I don't know. You tell him, listen, some questions have no answers. And so there are many ways in which lower class individuals kill the intellectual temperament in a child, whereas upper class people encourage the intellectual temperament in a child. And how very interesting that Jupiter is a planet that relates to class. But it is also, of course, related to knowledge and abstraction, and received knowledge. There's a relationship between a child's curiosity and how that curiosity is nurtured. There's a relationship between a child's how much education outside of school a child is given. There's a relationship with that, and how successful he is in life later on, and his upward mobility or his ability to maintain his upper class status. Something else that a lot of sociologists say is that when a child is raised in a house where there's like a lot of books, like there's a library, even if that child never reads any of those books, just by being around those books, there's some relationship between that and him also being interested in academics and him being upper class. It's very, very interesting. Unfortunately, I did not prepare myself enough to actually show you guys these studies, but listen, you guys could just Google it. So I just think that's very, very interesting. And so having Saturn in the ninth can be one of those positions that can signify somebody who may have come from a more lower class background. Their father did not really encourage much academics. Their father did not really enjoy or tolerate their question asking attitude, and things like that. But of course, it's not just enough to look at the ninth house, you have to look at everything else. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. So, do your parents control a lot of your life? Is that what you're saying? Does this apply to the D9? Yeah, it does in some ways. Yeah, very much. I will definitely, but my thing is, I'm trying to figure out which planet am I going to do next. Do I start with Mars? Do I start with Venus? I don't know which planet to do. Ah, very interesting. Thank you, Galactic Blueprints. When you say a strong Saturn, what do you mean? In astrology, we tend to mix language. We tend to mix strength with prominence with disposition. Saturn can be debilitated, but technically be strong. When your Saturn is debilitated but strong, what it means is that it has a lot of power to do a lot of harm. When your Saturn is weak, but exalted, it wants to do good, but it just does not have a lot of power to do good. You know what I mean? So, what do you mean by strong? If your Saturn is happy in the ninth house, it's going to bring a lot more positive things. You know something about the elitist thing that you're talking about, Angelus? Mulas and Purvashadas, they tend to be a little bit more elitist. Uttarabhadrapadas, they can be, in their own ways, they can be very, very snobbish. And the Revatis, they can really, really, really enjoy luxuries. And so, actually, in some ways, the nakshatras that exist in these signs, the Jupiter nakshatras, yeah, they can have a lot of that kind of attitude, a lot of that elitist type of behavior. What would the moon's influence be with Saturn the ninth? I mean, we will of course discuss that more deeply when we come to the moon series. But basically, the moon would generally be very conventional. They would enjoy the various ritual and cultural practices. They would try their best to embody all those cultural practices and to conform to them. You know what I mean? Yeah, basically. And they'd also be very, very respected by the people around them because they do such a great job to conforming to the expectations of their society. But of course, we'll discuss more when we see the Moon series. All right, do you guys have any more questions or things like that, or things that you'd like to comment or to add? Perhaps you guys have your own ideas of Saturn the ninth that you guys would like to share. This stream has only been for less than 50 minutes. It'd be a shame to stop it at this moment, but I'm at the end of my document, so I don't know. you know um do the sun. Okay. I am currently making a nakshatra video, yes. Hasta is, unfortunately, this year I'm not going to be doing Hasta. This year I'm going to be doing another Ashwini video. I'm going to be doing a Mula video. I'm going to be doing a Maga video. I'm probably going to do Rohini chapter 1 finally. Yeah, and those are probably the only videos on nakshatras I'm gonna do this year. But I'm gonna see what my dynamic is. Yeah. Um, Saturn in this placement makes. I mean, people around you are always trying to get you to conform to the expectations of society. Yes, because Saturn in the night also aspects the 11th, and so your collective is always trying to get you to conform. It does affect higher studies. Saturn in the night does affect higher studies. It can suggest that you have a difficult time finishing university, starting university. It can suggest that you're rejected by the people at your university, things like that. Maybe you do not go to the most prestigious university. Um, Maybe your teachers are very, very strict and very imposing and very, very strict. But if you survive that university, then you are refined into something very special. Saturn conjunct Mars in the ninth house, you're probably highly intellectual, very intelligent, constantly asking questions, and you arrive at very, very deep and profound understanding of philosophical, religious, cultural, social ideas. Yeah. Because Saturn is a planet that wishes to experience things personally and practically, and Mars is the planet of analysis. So, yeah. Oh, you feel like everything that I'm saying applies to you, even if you just have this in your D9. Yes, definitely. Galactic. It would definitely have a lot to do with casts as well. This is funny but sad at the same time. I understand that. I understand that. Something positive for Ashwini. Is my Ashwini video going to be a positive Ashwini video? Uh, well, it's gonna be a neutral video. It's gonna be a neutral video. Yeah. Yes, it can eventually make somebody who sets the system. If you're strong enough to deal with Saturn in the ninth house, it can definitely make somebody who overcomes the system and then imposes their own system on others. Yeah, my manga interpretation is gonna have a lot to do with society. My manga video actually is gonna have a lot to do with class. It's gonna have a lot to do with class, a lot to do with social class, a lot to do with how mangas on the one hand can be very classist, on the one hand can be social climbers, on the other hand can be the people who socially gatekeep. Manga Nakshatra in general has a lot to do with class, as you can imagine. D9 Saturn 9 affect marriage. It can. No, Saturn in Sagittarius is not the same thing as Saturn in the ninth. Not at all. It is not the same thing at all. Thank you. I have a soothing voice. I like to hear that. I'm thinking I I'm preparing my Ashwini video, but to be honest, I think I'm going to do my Mula video first, and then I'm going to do my Ashwini video, and then I'm going to do my Magha video, and then I'm going to do my Rohini video. I'm thinking that's going to be the order. I feel like that's going to be the order. Yeah, and then after Rohini, I have absolutely no idea. No idea at all. Pusha, I have a lot that I've done for Pusha, but I feel like I need to do more. I feel like I need to do more. My brief understanding of the D9, what is often said by astrologers is that the D1 is the tree and the D9 is the fruits of the tree. So the D1 makes many promises, but the D9 tells you whether those promises will be fulfilled or not. Saturn in the ninth, a Nepo baby placement. If Saturn is well placed, and if the Karaka of Saturn, which is Jupiter, is also well placed, it could be a Nepo baby placement, yes. Because your parents basically provide for you. If Saturn is well placed, then if Saturn is well placed and if Jupiter is well placed, then your parents provide for you and they provide for you well. But if Saturn is badly placed and Jupiter is badly placed, then your parents control you, but you're not a very wealthy person. And so, yes, this could also be a Nepo baby placement, but you still have to check a lot of things. Saturn making sure, yeah, it could. If it is in the side of Gemini, it could. But I suspect if somebody's suffering from speech impediments, it's probably a whole bunch of other things as well. Yes, I'm definitely going to post Saturn and Ashwini. In fact, I was debating whether to do first Saturn and Ashwini or Jupiter and Ashwini. And thank you for joining my Patreon. Shravana, nah, Shravana is not going to be this year, unfortunately. Shravana is not going to be this year. All right, let's stay here for like a total of 1 hour. We're at 55 minutes, so 5 more minutes. I'm just here to entertain more questions, more comments. Getting a sugar daddy. I mean, listen, you could always try. Who knows? Maybe you should try it, and then you'll come up with a new remedy, and you'll come and revolutionize the astrology field. I'd be very curious to see if a sugar daddy can remedy having a controlling dad with Saturn in the ninth. You know, I wonder what the sugar babies out there in the world have to say about that. Yeah, definitely. Galactic blueprints. Sun and the Night people are much more idealistic. And yes, very well respected. What other aspects to be related to speech impediments? Saturn in the first, Saturn in the second, badly placed second house, badly placed Jupiter. What else? Saturn, if it's badly placed, of course, in the second house. What else could be related to speech impediments? Second Lord in the 12th house, second Lord in the 6th, second Lord in the 8th as well. Something like that. What else could be related? Let us say the second Lord is combust. Combustions can really mess you up. Combustions are... One day I'm going to do a video on combustions. Like, I'm starting to realize that, wow, combustions are a very serious thing. And also second Lord defeated in war or fighting another planet. Will I cover more on Aslesha? Yes, I'm definitely going to cover more on Aslesha. I'm collecting more and more data. Yes, please go test the sugar daddy thing. Galactic blueprint about Saturn and night relating to yeah, to me, I can't see Saturn in the night creating travel. It's not the best thing for travel. If it is well placed, you can allow it, but it's not something that really encourages it. You're welcome, when Morgenstern. You are welcome. Houses that are related to fame. So obviously the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th are related to fame. The fifth house is the house of charisma. The fifth house is the house where people love you for your personality. They just think you're so fun, so cool, so interesting. And so the fifth house is also a house that is related to celebrity, right? Because it's your own charisma. It's the lights of your own personality. People love you for the light of your own personality. And so if you have good placements in the fifth, it could also make you famous. And since the fifth aspects the 11th and the 11th aspects the fifth, you see how that works. Oh, that's wonderful for your classmate. All right, we have 1 minute left for us to break 1 hour. To be honest, I'm probably going to start my Mars series after Saturn. I'm really feeling that pull towards Mars right now. Okay. Hi, Ezra. I think this is the first time you're participating in a live stream. Oh, so happy to see you. I always love reading your comments. So happy to see you. Are there differences between Saturn's aspects? That's a very interesting question. That's something that I need to think about. That's something that I need to investigate. Is there a difference between its third, its seventh, and its 10th aspects? Need to see that. When is going to be my next stream? As soon as I finish the document for Saturn in the 10th, that is when my next stream is going to be. So, yeah. Who knows? Maybe next week even. Maybe next week. All right, is it time to go? Is it time to go? I think this has been a nice stream. Very, very chill, very, very straightforward. And I thank you guys all so much for being here and for participating. Do you think exalted planets? The thing about a Libra sun is that a Libra sun is not going to be tactful. Exalted suns are much more tactful than Libra suns. Because when your sun is in Libra, you become rebellious. When your sun is in Libra, you become rebellious. You do not become diplomatic. Moon and ascendant in Libra make people very diplomatic, but sun in Libra can make people quite rebellious. Sun in Aries people are much more conformists. They obey hierarchy and things like that. Because when your sun is well placed, you become secure in yourself. A lot of times when your sun is badly placed, that's when you become rebellious. That's when you can't exist within a relationship, because sun in Libras, for example, they have a fear of relationships because they're always afraid that their relationship is going to overwhelm their individuality. And so they have a weird relationship with relationships. But somebody who has sun in Aries feels very comfortable in relationships because they do not believe that any relationship could ever truly crush them or overwhelm their individuality. So, yeah. Yes, because the ninth house is not only the fathers, but the fathers, plural. So, yeah. All right. Listen, I think now we will say goodbye. This has been a wonderful stream. Thank you guys again so much for participating. Sun and Aries are much more conforming because their ego is healthier. Their sense of self is strong and healthy, and they do not easily feel threatened. by society. They do not easily feel threatened by relationships, and they can much more easily exist within hierarchies for that reason. Somebody who has Sun in Libra, they have a fear of hierarchies because they have a fear of being overwhelmed. Because they themselves, somewhere deep down, they know that their own sense of self is not very strong, and so they're afraid of being overwhelmed. So yeah. Mars at its best is actually not a rebellious planet. Mars is a servant planet. Mars at its best enjoys serving and enjoys submitting. You know, Mars at its best is not rebellious, actually. Yes, Ezra. Swatis and Vishakhas tend to be quite difficult people in relationships. Okay, this is literally my third time trying to say goodbye, and then I see questions that I find interesting. So I'm gonna go hover all the way over here to the stop streaming button, and bye bye.